Living things are made of one or more cells. This image of bacteria represents organisms made of one or more cells. Bacteria are unicellular organisms. This image of leaf cells represents organisms made of one or more cells. Plants are multicellular organisms, meaning they are composed of many cells. This image of the African savanna represents organisms made of one or more cells. The zebras, water buffaloes, trees, and grass are all living organisms, and they are all composed of cells. Living things are based on genetic code. This image of a DNA strand represents organisms based on genetic code. DNA and RNA make up the genetic code of every living organism. This image of a cheetah with her cubs represents organisms based on genetic code. Genetic code functions as a blueprint for an organism, ensuring that offspring look similar to their parents. This image of an evergreen forest represents organisms based on genetic code. Genetic code instructs cells to develop into different types of cells. The genetic code of trees instructs the organism to create leaf cells, bark cells, and wood cells. Living things obtain and use energy. This photograph of a plant represents organisms obtaining and using energy. This plant is an autotroph, meaning it can create its own energy. Plants harness energy from the sun using photosynthesis. This photograph of a monkey represents organisms obtaining and using energy. This monkey is obtaining energy from the fruit, while also using energy to eat it. Monkeys are heterotrophs, meaning they must consume other organisms to obtain energy. This photograph of a cheetah chasing a gazelle represents organisms obtaining and using energy. Both organisms are using energy to run, and the cheetah is about to obtain energy by eating the gazelle. Since the cheetah must eat other organisms for energy, it is a heterotroph. Living things experience growth and development. This photograph of emperor penguins represents organisms experiencing growth and development. The adolescent penguin is shorter and smaller than the others. It also has different coloration and a fluffy texture. This penguin will change over time, growing larger and developing a different color and pattern. This photograph of tadpoles represents organisms experiencing growth and development. These tadpoles will eventually become frogs. Over time, they will grow in size and develop different features, such as legs and lungs. This photograph of a Peking duck and her ducklings represents organisms experiencing growth and development. The younger ducklings are much smaller and have yellow fluffy feathers. Over time, they will grow in size and develop smoother white feathers. Living things are capable of reproduction. This photograph of a turtle carrying baby turtles represents the reproduction of organisms. Most multicellular organisms, including turtles, create offspring through sexual reproduction. This process requires two parents, and the resulting offspring are genetically unique from both parents. This photograph of bacteria undergoing binary fission represents the reproduction of organisms. Some organisms reproduce asexually, such as this bacteria cell. The resulting daughter cells are genetically identical to the parent. This photograph of a Peking duck's nest represents the reproduction of organisms. Ducks reproduce sexually by laying eggs, which eventually hatch, resulting in the creation of independent organisms that have genes similar to their parents. Living things respond to stimuli. This photograph of closed tulips represents response to stimuli. Tulips close if they do not sense light, but open if they are exposed to it. The amount of light a tulip is exposed to is a stimulus, and the opening or closing of the tulip is a response. This photograph of a pillbug, also known as the roly-poly, represents response to stimuli. If a pillbug feels threatened, it will immediately curl into a tight ball. Any action that causes fear is a stimulus, and curling into a ball is the response. This photograph of a human eye represents response to stimuli. The iris of an eye will contract or relax, allowing the pupil to grow and shrink in response to different amounts of light. The The amount of light is the stimulus, and the contraction or relaxation of the pupil is a response. Living things maintain homeostasis. This photograph of a man shivering represents maintaining homeostasis. To keep internal temperatures at a healthy level, some organisms shiver. This movement warms the body. This photograph of a pig in mud represents maintaining homeostasis. To prevent internal temperatures from rising too high, many multicellular organisms sweat. However, pigs do not have effective sweat glands, so they wallow in mud to keep cool instead. This photograph of penguins huddling represents maintaining homeostasis. The Antarctic is subject to extremely low temperatures. To prevent internal temperatures from dipping too low, penguins huddle in large groups for warmth. The body heat of their neighbors allows penguins to survive hostile conditions. Living things evolve adaptions. This photograph of a cactus represents evolving adaptions. The desert is extremely arid, and it can be extremely difficult to obtain water. Cacti have extensive roots, spikes that trap moisture, and can hold large amounts of water. These adaptions allow the cactus to survive with extremely small amounts of moisture. This photograph of a tiger represents evolving adaptions. Tigers are carnivorous heterotrophs, so they must be able to sneak up on their prey without being spotted. The orange and black fur of the tiger camouflages it well, an adaptation that allows the tiger to remain unseen. This photograph of a zebra herd represents evolving adaptions. Zebras live in herds where they are less vulnerable to predators. This is a behavioral adaptation. In addition, the patterns on the fur of zebra can confuse predators, giving zebras an even greater chance of survival.